Tell her I love her. At the Omega Institute training, I was regressed one evening and taken, in my mind, to a beautiful garden with daisies. There I spent some time speaking with my guides, who watched me with love and happiness. I was given messages about my back pain and feelings of control. After a while, I was ready to leave this realm, but I had the feeling that I needed to wait. This is when I felt a spirit come to talk with me. I knew it wasn't anything to do with me. He had a message for Jeanette. Tell her I love her, he said to me. I was prompted to ask his name. It was Joe. I was highly skeptical about that, as it almost seemed too generic. It may as well have been John Doe. Nonetheless, I could clearly envision what he looked like. He appeared to me an older man with short, curly, whitish gray hair, olive skin, and a broad chest. He danced a jig from happiness because I promised I would pass the message on. Unfortunately, only 2 days into a training of well over 100 people, I had no idea who Jeanette was. I have received messages before, but only in dreams and nothing as clear as this. As with all the messages that I have had in the past, they nag at me until I do something about them. I didn't find Jeanette that evening, and so the nagging continued. When I was going to sleep, I asked that Joe go into holding until the morning, when he could pester me again. I have no idea where that idea of a holding came from, or even if there is such a place, but I had a fairly restful sleep. An hour before my alarm went off I was awake, and Joe was in my ear about Jeanette. Once I had delivered the message, confirming that Jeanette did know Joe, I asked him to leave and go to the light. He wanted to stay and help me, even though I didn't want him to. Joe explained that helping me was his way of though I didn't want him to. Joe explained that helping me was his way of saying, thank you, as well as part of his own spiritual healing. It was something he needed to do, and I had no intention of stopping him on his journey. By the end of that day, he was done helping my angels get messages through to me. Rachel, our rational minds often attempt to minimize or even negate the mystical, spiritual, or psychic encounters that we have. We forget the immediacy and the power of our own experience. If we receive validation and confirmation, we are able to let go of our doubts and embrace the reality of the event. Rachel was pushed by Joe to confirm Jeanette's reunion during her regression. Jeanette also knew that their meeting in her kitchen was not her imagination. Joe was helping her, healing her, and emanating his eternal love for her. The messages from Joe and from the other energies were not only for Jeanette. They are for all of us. You are loved. You are worthy. We all are. Do not let your own mind minimize or negate this reality. Faith, whose story follows, also received an important message from the other side. Passing it along to its intended recipients allowed her to validate not only her psychic impressions but also the important truth that our loved ones are always with us. Messages from beyond. The second day of your workshop in Los Angeles in 2002 started with a regression. Microphones were scattered around so that people could talk about what they had experienced after the regression ended. Across the room, a woman stood up at the microphone and told how she had come that weekend because her daughter had recently died from cancer. As she was talking, I kept seeing a light behind her. I tried to shake it off, but each time I did, it became brighter until finally it resolved into a very pretty girl with brown hair and blue eyes who was standing just behind the woman. The girl was looking right at me. I knew that I had to find this woman and tell her. During the break, I walked into the hallway, and even though there were 500 people at the event, the only people in the hall were this woman and her husband. First, I described the girl whom I had seen behind her in exact detail. The woman and her husband were both crying as she pulled a picture from her woman and her husband were both crying as she pulled a picture from her purse and showed me an image of her daughter. It was the girl whom I had just perfectly described. I then told her that she wasn't imagining it when she thought she heard giggling as the water splashed on her while doing the dishes, that when she was making the bed and thought she felt herself being tickled, she was, and that when she was sitting and reading or watching television and thought that she felt a hug or a head on her shoulder, she really did. The husband couldn't speak by this point. The woman told me that even though he didn't believe in any of this stuff, he had bought tickets for them to come to the weekend because he felt he should. When she had wanted to go outside during the break, he wouldn't let her leave the hallway where we now stood, so they had hung around and looked at the art. All the things that I had described to her were things that she had told her husband and no one else, things that she had been feeling happen around the house. Of course, by now we were all crying. I smiled and said, "For whatever reason, your daughter chose me to tell you what I just did. I am not someone who sees or speaks with ghosts, but this young woman unquestionably passed a message to her parents through me." It wasn't until I went back into the workshop room and sat down that I realized just how altered my state had been when I received those messages. From where I was seated, there was absolutely no physically possible way that I could have seen that woman at the microphone. There were two support columns in the room. I was sitting on the far left, and the microphone was placed behind the one on the far right. It was an impossibility for me to have seen her standing there. Yet I did. I needed to see her daughter, and I needed to be the messenger that day and bring a measure of peace to her and her husband's pain. Faith Susan, every one of us possesses intuitional abilities and powers far beyond what we know. Faith is not a professional medium or psychic, but as she entered the altered state, her vision became clairvoyant and unobstructed by physical barriers. She saw and heard with her heart as well as her eyes and ears. And the little girl's father trusted his intuition to get the tickets to the event and to linger in the hallway, even though he didn't yet know why. If we do not follow our intuition, we create obstacles and opposition, and oftentimes this can be dangerous. But if we follow our heart, we flow with the process, we do not force a block, much like the Taoist principle of Wu Wei. Spiritual beings strive to understand and flow with the process, not struggle against it. The little brown-haired girl wanted to comfort her parents, to ease their grief. Because the three adults opened their minds and trusted their intuition, the comfort was received. When in doubt, choose from the heart, not from the head. Soulmate, this is a part of Zindagi Ki Roshni consultancy. It has been established for those who have lost someone and for those who are very sad in their life. About 100 PDF books and 20 short audio books of this topic will be sent to those who join it. This data will be sent to their email or WhatsApp. If you want to join this organization, then please send WhatsApp message to this number.